Okay, so I mentioned in a previous video that I would be filming a video on why I chose CRNA versus NP. If you guys are interested, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I'm apologizing in advance. I look rough. I've been studying every day since the beginning. But I have an important test coming up in a few days, so that's why I look as horrible as I do today. But I know you guys are so lovely. You're just gonna accept me for who I am. I'm going to talk about why I chose CRNA versus nurse practitioner. So honestly, from what I've mentioned in my other videos is that you've known all along that I wanted to be a CRNA. I went to school, nursing school in general, to become a CRNA, and that was my main goal. But I'll be honest, there were moments where I felt like I was never going to get there because my GPA, my GRE score, my level of experience, like I knew that it was going to be a 3-year commitment. Like things kind of were starting to hit home for me, like I'm not getting any younger, and that the more time that I'm in, you know, the process of applying is time wasted in essence. So it kind of felt like there was a point where I needed to make a decision because it seemed like my dream wasn't going to be feasible. So I was thinking about nurse practitioner, and particularly the neonatal nurse practitioners, because that's where I was focusing most of my experience on, but I was open to doing acute care nurse practitioner as well. I never really did have an interest in family nurse practitioner. That just wasn't like where I wanted to be, because I mean, being an ICU nurse, you're used to a certain standard of pace, and you know, like it just wasn't what I wanted to do. At least for me, for sure, family wasn't on the board for me. It was acute, specifically neonatal nurse practitioner. So I thought, hey, I could probably try to do the nurse practitioner route, because I could do it as a part-time program. I could still be working. It wouldn't feel like such a commitment as far as like going to school, because CRNA school is a 3-year commitment and most places require that you don't work. So I was a little nervous about that because it's kind of difficult to, you know, plan that much of time in advance. You have to have the money, you have to have, you know, the financial planning, you have to have the support system. It's a lot. Like, it's a big commitment to do CRNA school. So I was thinking nurse practitioner would probably be a good idea because I could still work part-time. And I thought that would be great. That would be really, really great. But would I be entirely happy? And the answer to that question would be yes and no. Because nurse practitioners, you do have a lot of autonomy. You know, it's a nice job. I feel like it's a nice step above being a regular staff nurse. But it wasn't my dream. You know, my dream was to always be a CRNA. So I would have always held that regret that I did not try to get into CRNA school. I mean, I had already been applying for a couple of years, but you know, that I gave up, you know, in essence, that I quit on my dream and became a nurse practitioner. So I would have felt a little salty about that, I feel like, for sure. And then I thought, well, I could also do nurse practitioner and then still apply to CRNA school, because I would obviously try harder going to school and get a nicer grade as a master's nurse or even a DMP nurse practitioner, because then I could, obviously my GPA would be boosted. They can see that I can handle graduate level courses. I could see how a doctoral thesis would work. So it was like, to me, it felt like that's what I probably should do. But then I spoke to someone and they made it very clear to me that it might not be the best idea, because one, you're gonna be getting into a lot of debt. So I was thinking, that's true, I'll get into a nice thick amount of debt from a graduate program. Then some CRNA schools see you with a backup plan, and they don't like that. Like, they don't like the fact that you have plan B routes, because most people, like, they see you a passion and a drive, you know, for CRNA school, but if you have a backup route, it kind of looks bad. And I didn't think of it like that, because obviously I didn't want to be stagnant in a staff nurse job. So I was thinking I needed to do something, and I needed to do it now while I don't have kids or anything. So I need to do something. That one might be a good option, but then when she told me that, you know, some schools view it as a backup plan and that is not look like you're really, really, really passionate about CRNA, I quickly decided, okay, that's not what I want to do. But nurse practitioner did have its perks, you know. You have a lot of autonomy. You still do a lot of procedures. Yeah, it's doing a lot of notes, but I mean, you're at a higher level of education. You know a lot more than a basic staff nurse would know. So it's just like, and I'm really interested in education. I do like teaching and I do like learning. So I thought, okay, that would work for me. But in the end, I did get accepted into CRNA school, and I am happy where I am. This is exactly where I want to be, since it's always been a dream of mine. But that is the actual truth of it, that I thought maybe nurse practitioner would be better for me because of the reasons why I said before, with my low GPA and the fact that time was getting wasted, and that I would end up having to deal with 3 years no work, getting into debt, lots of debt, a lot more debt. So, there was a decision-making time that I had, for sure. Definitely, if you're on the fence about deciding if you wanted to do nurse practitioner versus CRNA, I recommend you shadow both roles. If you're dead set in CRNA, just give it a gander. See if that's something that maybe you would actually like. It does have its perks in terms of the commitment. It's not as intense as CRNA school, where you can't work at all. So look into it. It might be something that would work for you and your family. But for me, it was just that whole, I needed to do it because that's what I set out to do. So I wasn't going to be fulfilled if I didn't. But I do view both positions to be very, what's the word I want to use? Like beautiful professions, both roles. They both have similarities and they both have their differences. But you really have to be passionate about both in order to go through with both of them, because it's a big commitment. The school is really intense for either side. It does not, just because CRNA has a longer 3-year commitment doesn't make it much harder than nurse practitioner school. Nurse practitioner school is still pretty intense. The boards are still intense as well. It's not something that could be like a backup route because it's easier. That's not true. So after you've shadowed both roles, really sit back and think about what you're willing to do with your time. Because if you're gonna do a 3-year school commitment, that's like 3 years of your life on hold. You can't travel. You really shouldn't be watching TV, Netflix, binge watching shows. Yeah, you can still have somewhat of a life, but a lot of it is gonna be consumed with school. Then if you're thinking nurse practitioner and you want to work part-time, remember that you're still working, that you want to do school part-time, that you're still working more than likely a full-time job. Unless you drop down to part-time, you're still going to be working your 3 shifts a week. So 3 shifts a week plus part-time school, that's a huge commitment, and that's a lot of your life being consumed as well. Granted, it may be for a shorter period of time, but that being said, you're pretty much like sucked dry, like literally nothing left in you to do much anyway. The same thing, like traveling and all that is kind of off the table. So you have to really consider what you're willing to do with your time. Remember, it is only short term. If you consider your lifespan, let's say the average lifespan around 75, being in school for 3 years or a year and a half, 2 years, it's really not a huge deal when you think of the long term of your entire life. And then the fact that, once you finish school, then you have all this time to, make your experience, your chunk of time of working in the workforce before retirement. So like, even if you're getting to an older age and you feel like I can't be going back to school because I'm in my 40s, that's not true, because look at it, we are retiring later and later. People are retiring like 65, maybe even a little more. So if you finish at 45, you still have a solid 20 years of working in the field. You might as well be working at a nice higher salary because you deserve it. You earned it. Now that I've hit that salary point, I will say that going into CRNA school, I never did consider the salary as something that would make the decision for me. It was knowing that the salary is high only means that the risk is also high, that the responsibility is high as well. So with those things being, taken into consideration, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money as a CRNA, I want to go to CRNA school, because you actually have to put in a lot of time, a lot of thought, like a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifices, all of the above in order to get to where you want to be. And salary, yeah, it's it's nice, but that's not why you decide to do something. Because if that's the case, then you're in the wrong position. You need to really look back and see and find something that you truly, truly love, because you're going to be doing it for a long period of time. So if you don't love it and you're only doing it for the money, you're really going to hate it in the long run. But nurse practitioners do get compensated well as well. So that wasn't a deciding factor for me. I've never been one to live very, very large, so I don't need a lot of money. I just need to be able to support myself in the position that I'm at now. And I just feel like I should get compensated for the work that I do. So being that it's CRNA versus nurse practitioner, the salary was negligible in my decision making. So I'm at a point now where I'm in school and I'm getting so overwhelmed, because the notion that I'm going from being someone who takes orders and checks my orders in my patient's chart to being the person who puts the orders in, it's really stress inducing for me, because it's almost like you're going from being a follower to a leader. And I love that. Like, I want to be a leader, but at the same token, it's like you have to know the stuff to be able to be a leader. You have to be able to have autonomy and make your own decisions, but you need to know what you're doing before you do make those decisions. So it's a lot of stress, like when we're going over the school stuff. Like, I can't just like memorize it to take the test and just forget it, because a lot of these things are main core concepts that I need for being a safe functioning CRNA. So yes, all the material is a lot. I need to know it, and it's scary because it's so much. So yes, being a provider is the goal, is a desire, but it's so scary also at the same time. All right, well, that's it for this video. It's been long and lengthy, but I've pretty much gone over why I chose CRNA versus nurse practitioner. You guys do know that it was always a dream of mine to be a CRNA, but there was some little bumps in the road that maybe consider that maybe nurse practitioner might be for me. But now that I'm here in CRNA school, I'm glad that I stuck through it, and I know that you'll get through it too if you guys are interested in being CRNAs. That's it for this video, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.